Hello, Roundtable fans. I started different today. Yeah. Welcome to today's episode. What? Okay, we got to start over.
No, there's no starting over. No, Nick, do not go against the rules. There's no editing. There's no editing. These are this Jennifer trying new things.
See, we have so much fun. I'm Jennifer Eller. So welcome today. My co-host, Mike Hill, producer, Nick Wilson, and our guests are Lon and Kimberly Whitted. Yay, welcome. Okay, favorite movie. What's your favorite movie?
Probably would say my favorite movie would be the Karate Kid series from back in the day.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you ever want to do karate after that? Oh, I did.
No.
I watched that.
That or Top Gun. I mean, that was pretty cool. But
Did you watch the new Top Gun?
I did.
Did you like it?
I did. Yeah,
me too.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether I would or not, but me and Kimberly and her mom went to the theater and watched it, and it was like cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. We actually, you bought it for me for Christmas, and we've watched it a couple times at home.
Yeah. Did you go get some aviators after that? And a leather jacket and a ninja motorcycle? I mean,
I like those inspirational movies. I really like documentary type movies or true story type movies.
What's your favorite movie, Kimberly?
Pretty Woman.
Me too! Yay! I love it. And Nick went and saw it at the embassy, didn't you, Nick?
Beautiful, yeah.
Yes, I wanted to go see that.
did you do that because you love your wife, or did you do that?
My wife very much.
Okay. Yeah.
Was it good?
Surprisingly, it was really good.
Was it really?
It was a lot of fun.
Okay.
I'll have to watch. I saw it was in South Bend, and then I saw where you guys were there, so I should have.
And you didn't go, and
I didn't know.
You're a fan.
I didn't know it was in Fort Wayne. I just saw that it was in South Bend. It'll come on my news feed on Facebook.
Okay.
So, anyways, yay! I know, and that's a cool story. Okay. Do you guys like to cook at home, or do you like to eat out?
Yeah, we do a little of both. I love to cook, and I don't do it near as much as I should, or whatever you want to say, but
what's your favorite thing to cook then, if you cook at home?
You know, I knew you were going to ask me that after this came up. I really don't know, because I don't know that I have like a specialty or something of a favorite thing to cook, because I really like, if I see something or whatever, I like to recreate it. So it's different things. One of the coolest things I did, though, is kind of when I do the meatloafs.
Meatloaf?
Yeah.
Really?
That's Mike's favorite food. Did you
I
know that?
hate meatloaf. Maybe yours. Maybe I need to eat your
I take
meatloaf.
meatloaf and you roll it up, and you put like macaroni and cheese and stuff instead of roll it up, do a bacon weave on the outside.
Okay, that's not meatloaf. That is not meatloaf.
Wow.
I'm thinking meatloaf like meat and crackers. Like they put crackers.
Yeah, I don't put crackers in my meatloaf.
Somebody put crackers in their meatloaf. Nobody's ever
I don't
put
do that
crackers in their
'cause it
meatloaf.
I put oats.
Oats.
Rolled
It's the
oats.
same concept. It's just a filler. It's like eating. When we went to Kiev, Ukraine on a mission trip, we were there, I don't know, 12, 15 days. All of their meat has filler in it because it can't go very far. You know, so I'm like, that's like eating meatloaf every day. Ain't real meat. Anyway, sorry.
Just like listening to a book. It's not
No,
reading.
yeah, it is. No,
Okay.
no.
So what did you do on your first date? This be a good story.
Oh, boy. Well, I was invited to, this wasn't really, the first time we met, I was invited to a bonfire at some friend's house, standing around there, and my friend's wife, Jen, she says, hey, what do you think if I invite Kimberly out? And I'm like, who's Kimberly? So she shows me a picture, and I'm like, I don't know, whatever, fine. And at this point in my life, after everything that had happened, I was like, I wasn't even prepared for any woman in my life. So then she calls her, and she comes out. She doesn't know why she's being called there either until she gets there. And
I didn't
So-
know for an hour and a half after I was there
And
why
we
I was
didn't really
there.
even. We didn't really.
You didn't
even
know that it
talk.
was a matchmaker thing
No.
going on?
We didn't really even talk. So we did a little bit, and then she's getting ready to leave, and I'm like, I don't even remember what we were talking about, and I'm like, hey, something about getting your phone number, and she's like, well, if you want it, you'll find it.
Oh,
And she left.
Ooh.
I'm like,
playing
okay,
hard
whatever.
to get.
I was still kind of stunned that I didn't know
You
why
what?
I was there. I didn't know until,
Oh, got it.
and I was still like nervous about it, like why I found out.
I thought maybe it was one of them girl or woman games, like, hey, if you really want it, you'll find it. Like
Well, I
hard to
wasn't
get.
I wasn't looking either, so.
Okay.
So I got her phone number. I called her the next day. She was making cookies.
How did you find it then?
I got it from my buddy's wife.
Oh, I didn't know if you were in the days of phone books. Like a phone. How long has it been since?
Actually, I
a phone
had
Oh,
cell
gosh.
phones at this time. We met in September 19th, 2015.
Okay.
So we've only been married a short time. We got married New Year's Eve of 16. So,
Oh, awesome.
but our actual first date, we talked that week a few times. And our first date, we went to a swap meet.
A swap meet? What
For
were you
an
swapping?
animal swap meet or like?
Plants? I mean,
Gas
Well,
meat.
the same couple that introduced us, Jen's mom with her boyfriend, were taking stuff to DuckTales down at Jonesboro. So we went to Jonesboro, rode down with them, and that was our first date. We walked around there, and then way back, we stopped at Salamone at the reservoir, and we all just sat around and talked, and then, oh no, we went down to the wheel and ate first, and then we stopped at the reservoir.
What's the wheel?
The Wagon Wheel in Warren.
Is it
bar?
good?
It's a bar.
Huh.
Good,
I've never
they
been
have
there.
good food.
Have you been there?
I haven't. But they always have specials.
It's good, Nick. You've been there.
It is good.
Just like bar food.
Yeah, pizzas. I don't know what all.
The wheel.
I haven't.
It's on Main, well, not, maybe not Main Street, but it's on 5 going through downtown.
A new place to try.
And he
There you
did
go.
say that when I didn't have my purse and I wanted a pair of sunglasses because
I
I
forgot
forgot
that
mine, I said, "You got $10?" And he said to himself, "Okay, she's it. she can ask me for money and not worry about it." So
Yeah, the first date.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
that's good.
It was good. It was.
That's good.
it was different. Mm-hmm. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still was like, I just, I wasn't looking. I was just there to have fun. And
Yeah, and I mean, what I don't know when you're not looking is when things, I guess, hit you the hardest. I mean, I was fine raising my son. Had started thinking about, he was 15 at the time, and I had his permit, and I'm thinking, well, when he gets his license, I'm going to be alone because we'll never be home. So that had kind of started crossing my mind, but I didn't want anything to do with nightmares that I had had before. So
Yeah, so let's go back to the beginning a little bit.
Yeah, now
so,
I'm super interested in
yeah,
both their
so-
stories. Like,
So you had shared that you've always believed. So did you grow up in a
We have
Christian
been.
home?
yeah, we grew up in church every Sunday.
are you from around here?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Lived out by Bippus our entire life.
Okay.
Yeah. We live on 16 out there still now. Live a mile from where I grew up.
Oh wow.
Grandpa bought the farms way back in the 40s, and my brother still farms, and so
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, where was I? Yeah, grew up. Every Sunday we were in church. Come home, you had a big Sunday meal Mom had prepared, and kind of the routine. Not that when you're young you know how to follow, I guess, but yeah, we were always always there, raised well, you know, always in Sunday school, went through confirmation classes, did all that. And it was at that church at the time, still a member there. Raised my son going to that church, and he was confirmed there, but unfortunately it's a rural church that's congregation's elderly, and it's probably not going to be open a lot longer. But we had a great childhood there. There was a lot of youth there, a lot of youth fellowship. We'd go on trips to like Cedar Point and stuff. You know, it was big back then. One of the funnest things was like Christmas time. We'd have you ever heard of a progressive supper?
Oh, yeah. We did
Oh
those.
man, that was so much fun. You go to your friend's house, you know, for a salad, you know, and all your buddies are there. So go to another one for a main course. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, always believed. Always, you know, not to say that you don't fall away. You grow up and you still believe, but you're not following like you should.
Yeah. So what were some of the struggles in your life then? So you always believe. So what
Always
took
have,
you to
yeah.
like a downer place in life? Because you said there was some things that had happened.
Had, you know, got married out of high school, 20 years old. And I don't want to say we were too young. It just wasn't right. I don't want to say you're too young because I think when you find the person you're supposed to be with, I don't think you can be too young to start spending the rest of your life with that person. You know, if you know that's the person, then by all means. Never really felt loved in that relationship, or even probably didn't feel like I was giving love in that relationship. So wasn't a huge, you know, wasn't an ugly divorce or anything. Some things happened that really did hurt me, that whatever, but a couple years single, met Lane's my son, met his mom, and we were married 10 years and had Lane, and kind of the same thing. I just really wasn't loved in that relationship, and that fell apart too. So kind of was down on myself because, you know, not that we both, neither one of us did everything right. So, but again, in that relationship, some things that had happened to me, you know, made me feel pretty inadequate. So I don't know, single for a couple years again, and started seeing somebody that never should have. I mean, it was completely wrong on my part. Kind of, I didn't know the whole story at the beginning, but relationships been a bad thing in my life, really, you know. So yeah, we were dating. Found out she was actually married. That wasn't anywhere near my personality. And we had split things off, and I was talking to somebody else. Wasn't really dating anybody because I was like, okay, I'm over this. You know, this is. And she wanted to talk about a friendship, so I let her. We talked, and she gets mad, and I took a hold of her arm and said, "Hey, just stop and listen to me. You know, can't touch somebody." So she pressed charges against me again. I've never even had a speeding ticket in my life, so this is crushing to me. And whatever, got through that. Really, really down, really
I mean, did her
hard.
husband know about all of this stuff? I mean, if she's pressing
Yeah,
charges
I
against
mean,
you, how is he
I'm-
going to, like,
I'm certain.
react?
I'm certain. And I mean, it left I was a police officer at the time, and that wasn't the only thing that led to me resigning. It was a big part of it. One of the other things was Lane was like 9 years old at the time, and I had a guy pulled a gun on me, and I've got my gun drawn, and almost have to just shoot the guy. And didn't bother me at the time with the adrenaline and training. Didn't bother me at all at the time until I got home and started thinking about it. And I'm like, here I've got a 9-year-old son I'm raising on my own. His mom was in the picture. I mean, he would go there on weekends and stuff, except for when they had a blow up once and she didn't contact him, but whatever. So between those two things, I'm like, okay, I've got to go back to or do something different. And I ended up going back to the tool shop and doing engineering work and whatever now still, but I didn't even think about it at the time, but after going home and sitting down and thinking that almost ended a person's life that day, almost played God that day, could have had my life ended that day. So I decided that I decided that I couldn't do that anymore because I was going to be apprehensive and I could get someone else hurt. So I decided to resign along with what had happened. I was arrested. I spent a couple nights in jail. It was a misdemeanor, so it didn't. You can still be a police officer and have a misdemeanor. A felony's a different story, but through all that, it was like I was kind of like off the deep end, just down. So get through that, and I'm down on life, but I've never been a drinker. Well, I mean, I'm not against having a drink, but never been a drinker. Didn't become an alcoholic. Didn't get addicted. Don't do drugs. Never really done drugs either, but just wasn't part of our growing up. But so I was pretty down. I had some friends that I was pretty close with, and they are like, "Hey, you need to go on a walk to Emmaus." I don't know if you've ever anybody.
I heard of it, yeah.
And I'm like, whatever. No, I'm not. I don't want to do that because I'm more of a hide at home person, let everything pass. But they finally talked me into it, and I'm glad. It was a 72 hours of amazing things happening one after another. The first night there, sitting listening to different speakers, somebody spoke the words to me that I put on my Bible, that God's gift of grace and love is greater than all of our wrong choices. So I sat there that night thinking about that. I'm like, boy, I've made a lot of wrong choices here in the last several months. And I said, that kind of means something to me. So we had a night of silence then. And these words are in my head, and I'm, listening to everything that's going on. And we had time just to reflect, and it was a night of silence. You didn't talk. So I sat down and had a silent prayer with God. Had a long conversation with him that I probably had never done before in my life. and I asked for forgiveness. So, you go to bed, and you ever spend a night in a room with like 30 other men?
No.
It's like crazy because
Someone had to say something.
people start snoring, and it's like all over the room, you know. It was crazy, but so that wasn't too silent that night. But so the next day, you know, you had different tables, and I was at the table of John, and you just sat and we had discussions, kind of Bible study type things, and listen to people and listen to stories and whatever. Get up and take a break, and you might come back, and there might be a note on the table or something to you. So we take a break, and I come back. And this is sitting on my table. It says forgiven. Nobody else knew that. We had a night of silence. I had a silent prayer. Nobody knew what I'd asked for. It could only mean one thing to me, that was definitely from God. So I'm sitting there. As soon as I see it, I'm an emotional person, so I'm sitting there, you know, trying to choke this back, and we're talking about it, and I'm like explaining to them what just happened to me, and it was just a wow moment, you know. It was crazy.
I have a question. So
Sure.
you grew up in church, but you did you not like attend through your adult years? It didn't sound like you had a relationship with God at all, or it was very minimal.
It was minimal, probably. You know, grew up and then get out of high school and you move away from home, and that wasn't the top priority on Sunday morning. That wasn't the top priority to go to church. Not that we didn't, but it was not regular whatsoever.
Yeah, even not even going to church, but it didn't even sound like you even like prayed or really
Yeah,
seeked God out or anything.
Only when bad things happen.
Yeah.
You know,
I
you
agree.
know,
That
and
was
I don't
my-
understand
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's one thing I wanted to talk about too. I don't understand why do we wait for why did I wait for the crash in my life to actually listen? And you know, God's talked to me all along. And I look back when I was an officer. So why don't we look at the good things? You know, you have a house, you have a wife, you have a kid. All that's given to us from God, and those are good things. So why don't we use the good things to transform our lives instead of waiting for the catastrophic? You know,
Right.
I was working security at the high school way back, still a police officer, and right around the time that the crud was happening, this was God telling me, showing me love. The special needs students would come in earlier than all the other kids. And this girl named Stephanie, she had autism, and she could speak. It was really hard. You had to really listen. And she would come over every day and stand and talk to me, and never gave it much thought. You know, she would come talk to me, and they came in one day, and her teacher wouldn't let her come over, and I don't know what had happened, but she said she couldn't come over and talk to me, and she was acting out, and the teacher wasn't very happy. Finally, the teacher did bring her over, and she got to talk to me, and she stood there holding on to my arm, and we stood there and talked, and then it was time. The teacher wanted her to go back and sit down, and boy, she didn't want to leave. And I'm like, well, I'll go sit down with you, you know, it's fine. So we walked over, and then she was fine, and we left that day. Nothing happened the next day. she came in and she came over and she had a dandelion in her hand. And she gave that to me. And the teacher said she picked that on her way to school. We didn't know why she had it. But now we know why. And that was God showing me love that I ignored, you know. So I don't understand why we don't look at these great things that happen in our lives that come from God. Why we don't use that. We wait for the bad. You know, we wait for alcoholism to take over, or we wait for drugs to take over, we wait for a death or a near-death experience that could have been avoided, you know. So, yeah.
So tell us more about
off-
the
I got
Emmaus
off-
thing. I
I
want to
got
hear
off
more about
track.
that. But I was curious about, like, all of
off
a
track.
sudden, like, God's this important thing in your life, but you grew up in church, and so I just didn't
Yeah,
know what that
so-
looked like. So,
Still at Emmaus, and I've been forgiven. And the next, I don't know if it was the next day, it was 3 days, but one night we had a big service. Actually, before that, I think that was the next day, we had another day of everything, and we had it was kind of why it was a little hard for me to talk about the bad relationship, because we did a dying moments prayer. We did a dying moments service where
dying
moments.
Okay.
We actually wrote down, or you could write down whatever, something that, you know, and I wrote out all that with the relationship and gave it to God. So I let it die, you know. I was forgiven. So what that was saying to me was, now you're forgiven. To actually feel the forgiveness, you have to forgive. So that was me forgiving her for the wrongdoings, forgiving myself for the wrongdoings that I had done, and I let it die. We had a big well or something that we threw them in, and you prayed about it and you let it die. So I really don't try not to think about it. I mean, it always comes up, but I don't really talk about it because that's done and over with. I've forgiven for that, and I've been forgiven for that. So
You moved on to this beautiful
Yeah.
woman beside you.
exactly, that's
Okay, go back to him.
No. I told you I'm going to get you to talk.
I'm just fine listening.
You are.
so. The next day or whatever was the last day. I think during our walk, we had a service, and things kind of come to light of what's happening. And I don't want to say too much here, because if anybody does it, it's not that it's a secret, but for you to appreciate it, you need to experience it. So come to find out, you know, you have love coming at you from everywhere, and prayers, thousands of people praying for you while you're doing this. And I'm feeling all this, feeling the forgiveness, and I'm sitting after the service that we had, I'm sitting there, and again I'm just overwhelmed with, I don't know, joy, whatever, overcome with emotions, and I'm asking, I'm like, okay, why do I deserve this? Why do any of us deserve this? And there were some guys, some of the leaders that were there around, sitting there with me, and I just kept asking, I said, why? Why do I deserve this? I don't understand Why do I deserve all the love that I'm being shown? Why do I deserve all the prayers that I'm getting? Why do I deserve to be forgiven? And there's a guy walking by. And he turns to me and he looks at me and he says, "You don't." And at that point in time, when he said, "You don't," it all made sense because we don't deserve it. Right. We absolutely do not deserve any of it. But it made everything come full circle because we don't deserve it is what makes it so great, because God's gift of grace and love is greater than all of our wrong choices, and he's going to give us that love and that grace even though we don't deserve it. Mm-hmm. So 2 words made it all make sense to me at that time, that we don't deserve it. And I have a theory of who that was that told me that, because I don't remember the guy through the 3 days, and I didn't see him after that. So, for lack of not sounding crazy, but
it's okay to sound crazy.
I have a
Why
theory.
do you think I'm not talking?
I have a theory, well.
Who was it?
Well, back to being forgiven, okay?
Kelly was hanging.
So when I was having my prayer, I could hear God and Jesus having their conversation. God's like, "Hey, son, this guy's asking for forgiveness. Should we give it to him?" And Jesus is like, "Yeah, absolutely we should. But, Dad, we have to make this obvious because this guy's an idiot." So it had to be obvious, something thrown in front of me. But I truly feel that the guy that came walking past me, I think he had to make it obvious again, and I would say that was Jesus Christ himself walking past me and telling me, for me to understand what he meant by 2 words, it had to be. I mean, I have no other feeling than that.
You hear people saying that. It's like there was somebody there, but then I turn around and they're not there anymore.
Right.
It's like...
Yeah, it's not like he disappeared. I just, as the night went on and stuff, I didn't see him again. So it just, whether it was him or not, it came from him. So.
Right.
So, yeah, come back home and you leave there. My heart was on fire. And I felt great, and me and Lane we were back going to church every Sunday. He got involved with and got confirmed through our church. The pastor that was there, Larry, me and him had a really great relationship. And I could open up to him, and we could sit and talk, and it was great. But I had all this fire going on, and I come home, and then I'm like, what do I do with it? I'm like, now what? But I was, living and trying to teach Lane the right things, and he was, we were going to church and things were going good. And Larry retires. So I feel a little more lost because now I've lost the person that I felt like I could, go to with anything. Not that he went away, but it was just kind of a loss in my life, and nothing. I don't want this to sound bad. I hired a woman pastor, 2 of them now, and I just didn't feel the connection. didn't feel like I could go open up, you know. I could come sit down, you know, probably feel like I could open up with you, you know, and with a woman, I don't feel that, you know, just my personality. So not that we're still living the correct life, you know, living a faithful life, but we weren't in church every Sunday and like we should have been, and not praying every day, not following like we should have. And then kind of back to where we left off when we met, I was to the point where I was okay. You know, I didn't want a relationship. I didn't want a woman in my life. And didn't need it. And didn't think, because of everything that had happened to me, I became okay with the realization that, okay, I've got God's love. I know I have that. Jesus loves me, because the song says he does. But I came to the realization that, okay, on earth, I can't be loved. So, but I was okay. That was fine with me. And then she blew that up. So we met, and then I don't know. I've never, other than through my walk and feeling that love, that's totally different than the love you feel humanly, I guess. And once we started dating, I started feeling love, and started feeling love for her that I felt for my son. And that was an incredible feeling. And then she shows me love that I never felt like I deserved either. So we ended up getting married. We dated, less than a year, and got married. Well, a little over a year when we got married. But that's been a great part of my life, because I didn't think that I could be loved because of not being loved before. So it's been refreshing.
I mean, I don't even know where you want to go with that.
I don't know. You've been so quiet the whole time.
I mean, there's so much to like talk through in like that whole process. So, do you have more questions?
I do. Nope. I just we had like texted, so I knew a couple things. So, but no, he's hit everything I had. So, unless you have something in your notes,
I had all kinds of.
Well, I mean,
So I guess
go ahead.
finally, I guess, getting back to faith, you know, I had love again, and then we started wanting to go to church. We would go to my church in Bippus, but I just didn't feel the connection there, you know. Loved the people there, loved growing up there, but just that's not where it was, where I was being pulled to. And we tried other churches. I don't know, one of them to me felt like a cult. Nothing against it. I don't think it's a bad place, but I won't mention any names. And then you go to other churches, and when you ever walk in somewhere and you feel like everybody looks at you and like, what are you doing here? Who are you? And then we started, I don't even know what.
I had been coming here for a little bit, and then my mom started coming here, and then I stopped coming, and then.
What happened? The pastor make you mad?
No.
I'm just kidding.
No, it was just me.
Yeah.
Just
we kind of started coming around COVID time off and on, not regular. But then probably 2 years ago, we were more regular. And then it started becoming, okay, we come in, listen to you. And at that time, there was probably a couple hundred people out here. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to you, and I'm like, there was like nobody else around. It was like you were talking to me, you know, and we were having this one-on-one conversation. And that was happening time and time again. And then Taylor would speak, and I'm having the same thing. And I'm like, okay, something weird going on here. And then we just started to become more involved. We started being regular. Last summer we did a class with Lance and Mary, and we were trying to figure out what class to take, and I don't know. We feel like we have a really strong marriage, and becoming faithful has helped that. So we were going to sign up for a class, and they were doing a marriage class, and I'm like, well, we don't really need a marriage class. Let's do something, you know, the selfish way of thinking. Let's do something where we can get more out of it. And then the more we talked, we're like, well, because we were drawn to that marriage class for some reason, because God was pulling us that way. We're like, okay, well, maybe there's something that we can say that'll help somebody else. But it's not like the class was even about bad marriages. It was about strengthening your marriage through faith. And that was one of the greatest things that I've done, or, you know, that we've done. So we did that, and then Lance invited me into his group on Sunday mornings, and did that, and then I started hearing about the work release program and all that, and I'm like, when I started hearing about that, I started getting a real pull towards that ministry, and God was really tugging at my heart. So I did all the paperwork, and that was taking months. It wasn't going through, and I'm like, okay, you know what? God, tell me what I'm supposed to be doing. I thought this was, you wanted me here. And then one Sunday morning, Taylor brings Anthony into our group. And Anthony had just got out of out of jail. He was at work release and whatever. But so I met him that Sunday morning, and then I think it was Thursday, God told me, he said, hey, you need to call Anthony, see what's up. I didn't have a phone number or anything, so I get a hold of Taylor and get his phone number, and I was going to text him, and I'm like, I do text quite a bit, but I don't really like text messages because you can't get anybody's emotion and feeling out of it. So I just called him, and I'm like, hey, just wanted to check on you, see how things were going. And he's like, man, things are terrible. I lost my job and this and that just started a whole relationship with him. And again, thought I was doing this, you know, to help him, thinking, you know, I'll try to mentor him a little bit and this and that, which hopefully I have some. But the crazy thing is through this whole journey with Anthony, he's probably done more for me than I have for him. At least I feel that way. Through, you know, God working through me, and it's just been incredible. That's a whole nother story. I won't get into it. That's another hour-long session.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, we could go down tons of different paths of different things, but a couple things that I want to hit on, or things that I want to like process. So, one of the things that you brought up was, so why don't we seek God in the good times? You know, so So now you are in the good times, right? So what, if you're going to give advice to people, like, what are you doing now? Because this is a lot of people's story, right? Is that, you know, you grew up in church and you're in it. And even though if you don't fall away, if things are good, you tend not to like continue to surrender and continue to get closer and continue to do. So for those people that life is good right now, before the catastrophic event, before the things that come that way, like what recommendation would you guys say that you guys do individually? Like that whole idea of like, how do you now, different than before, press into the Lord and not wait for the catastrophic event to grow closer in your relationship?
Well, over the last year here, it's become quite evident to me that the more you're involved, things happen. Because the more we've become involved, things have started falling into place with Anthony. Then the work release, that all went through, and now we've got guys coming to be baptized, you know, and there's a lot of guys to give a lot more credit to than as I've only been able to go there for, since January or whatever. So there's a lot of guys that have been doing that since the beginning that deserve the credit, you know, and now we have guys coming to get baptized, which is awesome. But being involved, and being involved at church, but also being involved with your Bible and being involved with Jesus. I get up every morning at 3:00 and do chores, and that's coming to an end.
Chores are?
Me and Lane, we've always raised some pigs. Very small scale, but when he was in 4-H and stuff, we started raising pigs and showing pigs and started having success, and so we've always loved it, and it always sold some, but we were doing it together and having a lot of fun because we were having success with what we were raising that he was showing. And after he got out of 4-H, we just kept raising some pigs, and we'd sell them to people, you know, and we've had some pretty good success. Had state fair champions out in Delaware and Maryland, and
Wow.
But that's coming to an end. I sold the sows. He's got a baby now, so they're on their lives, and it's not him and I in the barn all the time. But when his last year in 4-H, somebody asked me, says, "Well, you going to miss the fair next year?" And I'm like, "I'm not going to miss the fair at all."
Right.
I said, "But what I am going to miss is every night leading up to the fair, of spending every night with my son in the barn."
Right.
That was because that was our thing. That was our piece. Sometimes.
Not leading up to fair is not peace.
We might have had some arguments in the barn, but
Right.
but that was our thing together. And you know, he was growing up, getting older, getting out of 4-H, and we still did it because we really had so much fun doing it together. Now, like I say, his life's moving on, so.
So at 3 a.m., do you spend time with God at 3 a.m. when
now.
you're out in the barn?
I do now. I go out and do chores, and then I'll come in and I get ready for work. I leave for work about 4:30. But after I get ready, I sit down, and now every morning I'm in my Bible and I'm praying and learning, you know, more and more and more, and praying. I always said I didn't know how to pray, but you just got to sit down and talk to him like you're having a conversation with somebody.
So for sure, get plugged in.
Yeah.
Stay in the Word. I mean, Kimberly, you have any other like thoughts for you would, you know, for yourself that's been helpful?
I joined Kim Patmore's book club on Thursday. That really helped me start getting more into it. And then when he joined Lance, Mary was doing one Sunday mornings also. So I love both of those groups and all of the women in there. And then
That's for being in community.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then I started to do a devotional thing. I do that every morning. Start the day, drink a cup of coffee, do that, hold my cat. And that's how we start every day.
Yeah.
And it just makes me feel so much better.
Yeah.
I think the next thing that we need to do is start reading and praying together more. That's our next step to become.
I'm not getting up at 3.
No way.
Okay, here's
I'm an early riser.
Even though
so
I am up usually because
Yeah.
I can't sleep. But
so this is kind of I mean, this is just something that's been lately on my heart because you're seeing it more and more. In fact, just got a conversation yesterday from a guy that dated this girl all through high school. They ended up getting married. I mean, he's in his early 20s. They're getting a divorce, you know. And so there's this bad relationships tend to be more common today and are ending in bad relationships. And now this is the struggle, right? So there's two struggles to go with it. One, which we can't get into because it's not your story, is then there's a lot of these young people that are like, I'm not entering that fire, right? So there's a lot of people waiting to get married because they don't want to go there. Then you have this other group of people that, okay, this was bad, I want something different. And they're finding there's not much different out there. Like your story is somewhat unique, you know, that you guys found each other and it's good and God's in the center of it and things are going in the right direction. That's hardly anybody's story today. You have men looking for godly women, they can't find them. Godly women looking for godly men, can't find them, or we just given up because there ain't nobody left. So can you talk through
one thing we've got to remember is it's in God's time. So Anthony and I were talking one time because he saw the strength in our relationship and he's like, well, how did you find her? I said, look, it took 2 marriages and 44 years for me to find her. You know, we have no idea. You might find them at 20 years old, but it's what your heart tells you. You know, and advice that I would give to somebody going down the path of divorce is, first of all, you have to sit back and look at, do you love that person? And if you do have love for that person, then you got to fight. Divorce is way too easy. Go to the library and get some paperwork and get a divorce. Shouldn't be that easy.
Yeah.
You should have to fight for it. Now, not to say that some people are not supposed to be together.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, I feel that my first 2 marriages, we weren't supposed to be together because there was something waiting for me out there that just hadn't been presented to me yet because it wasn't his time. But if you have love for that person, you have to put up the fight. Divorce is way too easy.
Yeah.
That's the easy way out.
and I've lived here since 1993, and I've never seen him.
Yeah.
I mean, Huntington's not huge. I've never seen him. I've known his sister, and she's been a client of mine for years and years and years. She never once said, you want to meet my brother? Or, I mean, it's just.
Well, I'm not.
Like,
I'm not going to screw it up because I married up. I'm not screwing that up.
Yeah, so talk through it. So how did you get to that place then? So how did it, I mean, were you, because you said you weren't looking. Had you been looking before?
No.
And it just didn't work?
No, I had just gotten out of a 21-year relationship, and I had been a couple years, and I was to the point that I was fine being by myself. And, you know, it was just my kids and I, and we were happy.
You know, sometimes you have to be there. Some people are there early on in life. You have to be fine with yourself before you can be fine with someone else.
Yeah.
And
I had to be fine with myself before I could be fine with, like, I don't think I was fine
Or
with myself.
you have to love
Being alone.
You have to love yourself before you can love someone else. And that's where
Right.
I was.
Yeah.
I probably didn't love myself. I knew I was loved by Jesus, but I didn't love myself because I didn't think I could be loved. So
And how was your relationship with Christ through that whole process? I mean,
Kind of the same. I was raised in a Christian home, but then when I got out and moved here, and you know, I was 19 years old. I just
yeah.
that wasn't part. I was having too much fun,
Right.
and then my parents moved back here in '96, and then then I started going to church with my mom here and there, nothing regular. And I would take the kids. She would take the kids to like a Bible study in Fort Wayne, and they would play, and so they would go to church too. But it just wasn't really a regular thing for me. And then I'm not really sure when it became a regular thing for me. It was on and off until then we started coming regularly.
Yeah, and do you think that that's so to the people that are out there going through your same situation? So to one, don't make divorce easy. Like if it's fight for it if it's right.
Yep.
But then if it does happen, work on yourself first. I mean, is that the advice that you would give? Is like,
absolutely. Well, work on yourself and work on your faith. Get your faith and your relationship with God right, because a relationship's not going to work without God in it.
right.
And maybe my first two, you know, if I would have been more in tone with God, maybe that's what it needed. You know,
Well, it takes both of you.
it does take, and don't ever fall into the trap of blaming the other person, because until you can look in the mirror and say you've done nothing wrong, then you're never going to be able to do that. So don't blame the other person, because you've done just as much wrong as the other person.
Right.
So you have to be right with God first. So if you get divorced, get right with God, have a relationship with Jesus, and then the sky's the limit after that.
And do you think that's what is making your marriage today healthy, is your own personal relationships and the thing that God is
Absolutely.
doing, and then
Our own personal relationships, and then our relation. That's why I say our next step is to even become more involved in our relationship and faith in God together.
right.
So, but first you have to have that relationship with God, and then
Yeah, because I always say it's like in phases. Like for a man to love his wife the way that she deserves, I mean, you have to be overflowing, right?
Absolutely.
Because you just can't give to your wife what she deserves if,
yeah,
you know, and I think that's always the challenge, you know, is to make sure that your cup is full so that you can give, not to empty, but you're giving the overflow.
Yep.
You know, I think sometimes we do that backwards. You know, sometimes we think inside of marriage it's to empty yourself out, and it's not to empty yourself out. It's to give the overflow, because when you're empty, I mean, You're not. That's not the way that it's supposed to work.
Right. You have to. Definitely, God has to be your most important. Not that you're second, but God has to come first.
No, she is second.
She is to God only.
That's what I meant. Yeah,
God
like you.
only.
But you've made that clear, and that's a good thing.
You have to love. I want to love you. I want to love you like I love God, but I can't because I love Him more.
Right. But you've learned, and I think this is the key, and this is something that's been on my heart, is that we talked about it in our staff meeting yesterday of, like, what do we need to be thinking about in 2025, so as we're moving forward in the future. And I said, well, I feel like, God's laid on our heart, like, we have to get healthy relationships right, because I do think, and the more I hear this, and just even last night in that conversation, I'm not really sure people know how to love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't
Absolutely.
know. They understand. They know how to have feelings. They know how to have infatuations. They know how to have attachments. They know how to have things that bind you together. But true love,
Right.
I don't know that there's a lot of people that understand true love, because you can't really understand it fully until you have the love of the Father, and you understand the love of the Father and our relationship with Him. And when that's right, we know how to love our wives. You know what I mean? Because we get it. It's not a feeling anymore.
You have to. Once you have that love of the Father,
Right.
then your love for your wife and your family is second nature.
Right. Instead of it just being religion.
Yeah,
Like, I know a
right.
lot of men who would say they have religion. They go to church.
Sure.
And they take notes and they write things down, and they could tell you what the Bible says, but that whole love of a father and the understanding of a love of a father, so that you can then turn around and love other people. Yeah, I think that's the part sometimes we miss. And I think that's what you're talking about. And now this next step, which is the natural next step, is that God says you're incredible individually, but you'll be a better team. And so the things that you guys are talking about now are, okay, God, now that we've worked on ourselves and we're here and we have individual ministry things that we're doing, how could you use us, as a team? And so that'll be exciting to watch and see what that looks like in the future for you guys.
It's been exciting to see our relationship grow, and since getting involved with Life Church has been. We had a great relationship even before Life Church, but it's just flourished since then. In my opinion, I mean, it's
Just good people.
yeah.
And I think that's always the key.
We found a church home. We found a faith family here that I've never had. Maybe didn't realize it probably as a kid, maybe in church, we had that faith family, but being here has been just an incredible thing. I mean, through all the trials with Anthony, I reached out to you and the elders, and they helped with the situation with him, and it's like, man, it's just been incredible how the response or whatever.
How it's supposed to work.
Yeah.
That's always the funniest thing, is when we talk about these things, we talk about them like
they're odd,
but it's supposed to be that way.
Right.
I mean, the idea of a gathering together as a church is we are a family, and when you act like a family, and when you treat each other like a family, the things that can happen are significantly different compared to attending a church.
Yeah. Well, a crazy thing that there's been so many things that's happened since we've been here is me and Eric were talking one Sunday morning after I think it was right after the deal with Anthony. And he's like, man, I'm so proud of you for for listening and obeying, and, and this and that. He goes, but, and we were standing together, and he goes, but don't let that come between this. And I'm like, nah, that'll never happen. So, like that very week, I thought about that a few times, and that very week, it was on Friday, the girls from your book club were going to go out, and you weren't going to go for whatever reason. And at the last minute, you decided, you were going to go. So through the week, I was thinking, okay, I have to, because Anthony and I had talked several times because he was having a lot of issues. I'm like, okay, I got to manage this somehow. I'm spending a lot of time over here, and that Eric's right, that can't affect this. So what do I do? So that Friday night, Anthony and I hadn't talked for a day or so. She says, I'm going to go ahead and go with the girls, go out to dinner and whatever you did. Hang up the phone from her, and 15 minutes later, Anthony calls me. No, it wasn't after it. He calls me with his whole ordeal, and I spent the entire evening dealing with him and getting him the room and all that. Had it not been God being involved in telling Kimberly, why don't you go out? Lon's got to take care of this tonight for me. So you go out with the girls, and that's not going to, then you're not taking time away because, Lon, you really need to take care of this tonight. Right. So it's things like that you look at, only God's going to do that. Right. I mean, he knew that there was an interruption when you gave a sermon on once you say yes, and once I said yes to Anthony and my faith, you better be ready for the interruption because
plenty of them.
You're going to be interrupted, and that's for sure. Yeah. But thank God he looked at that interruption and said, okay, I'm going to fix this so you're not taking time away from her.
Yeah. Well, again, so we're at the end. See, look how fast that goes. So, I mean, again, from Life Church's perspective, like the thing that we'll continue to pray for is because you guys' story is full of a lot of redemption and a lot of hope for the future. And so, my prayer is that you'll continue to use your story individually, you guys' story individually, and your guys' story together, because there's a significant amount of people that are your story, and they have not made it to the other side. And they're looking for hope, and they're trying to understand, is there another side to these things?
Yeah, I kind of look as our individual stories, not that our individual stories come to an end, but our individual story has kind of ended because now our together story is taking us forward.
Right. And I just think that that's going to be something that's going to give hope to a lot of people they can see where you are today and know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So we'll be praying that as you guys are involved and in relationship with people, that you can continue to share, the hope that comes, that you can continue to challenge men, specifically when you said about the Emmaus, like it's not always just even going to an Emmaus, it's removing yourself from a situation and let God speak. Yeah. And it can be an Emmaus, it can be time away, whatever those things are.
You have to completely disconnect yourself from everything else. When you go to that, your phone stays at home, you have no contact. No. You have to disconnect from everything.
Well, and just a recognition, too, and this is encouragement, and we'll kind of leave it with this. I mean, it's encouragement, and I'm sure this is in both your stories, because this is in all of our stories, that God uses other people to speak to us when sometimes we're deaf, and so the guys that were inviting you, the person, whether it was Christ or not, that walked by. So, one, encouragement to those who are trying to reach the Lons of the world, you know, because a lot of those people are discouraged because they're not listening. Yeah. You know, and I've tried to help them, keep trying to help, because there is an angel story that can come out of all of those things. Just wait for the right time. So keep doing it. And to those that were in your situation, and like, listen, because there's a time to surrender, you know, and I think that's the key for all of us, is to remember that a lot of us try to keep the balls juggling and going and keep everything together and make it all work. And there is a time to surrender. And those are the times that I always say you put markers down in your life. Could God meet you in ways that can only happen through total surrender? And so that, you know, is a cool part of your story. And we'll continue to pray. Are you guys first or second service? First service. So you see, if you're coming to first service, or you're watching or listening, make sure that if you're listening, make sure you watch. So you got to go on YouTube to make sure that, and if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube, you need to. But you can go on YouTube, see, get a good look. That way, when see you guys in first service, it can come up and say hi. I don't know. Do you guys sit in different places? You might be the only guest that I wouldn't know exactly where you sit, you know, on a Sunday morning.
We're typically kind of on the left, towards the front.
Towards the front. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to be more center in the front, but
When
with
he
it
is-
growing, it's so hard to.
Yeah. When he is with the work release,
Oh,
I
that's
sit
right.
with my mom.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
My mom.
And
And sometimes we sit in different places.
yeah.
But
I do think it's funny. A lot of people are very creatures of habit, and I can just know. And then people have changed it up.
We
But
grew up that way, you know, in our little church.
Yeah.
Here, we really probably should move around because there's so many people, and I see people every week that I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were coming to church here, you know, and it's crazy. So we probably should move around.
yeah. Well, again, everybody, if you are, again, once this comes out, I think it'll come out. I don't even know what
This
today
week,
is.
next week, I don't know.
Whenever it comes out, make sure you like, share, or comment. That way we can get it out on other people's feed. And again, share it with whoever you can. Just a great story. Thank you for you guys both being willing to talk through your journey and the things that God's doing. And again, if you're watching or listening, you continue to pray for what the future is and the things that God's going to do and the way they're going to be used. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks
Bye.
for having us.